All right, y'all, you are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. The views expressed on this show are Dusty's own, unless otherwise stated, and absolutely do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, Professor Manzi, Jack Fletcher,
No, I don't like pictures.
and the DCCCD, possibly the Richland Chronicle. All right, y'all, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. That was a nice little ditty that we used to transition here. Left the mics hot, left the music going, and I got to tell you, some of us can sing and some of us can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow,
Let's have a sing-off since you want to play games here.
we did freestyle last time. Should we have like a?
That was not a sing-off. Freestyling is not song.
Well, we could switch it up.
Okay.
Want to do
That's a hot
opera?
take. That's a Ben Shapiro
Opera.
take.
Let's do a key of F sharp.
Oh wait, hold. I can do opera.
I can't.
You guys want to do a Caruso so you
Let's
can get
not.
closest to Pavarotti?
I don't even know what we're talking about right now.
Let's do Pagliacci. That's you know who Pagliacci is? He's the
Yeah.
sad clown.
Yes, of course. But
He's
I
the
don't
Jeff
remem-
Manzi.
I don't remember
no idea.
Pavarotti's performance of that song. I know he did it, and I've listened to it a lot because it's really good. But I forgot what the actual climax is in Italian.
Okay, number one, you need to teach me how to do that. What you just did there.
It's with my fingers. I didn't do the flippy thing.
Oh, that's what I thought you were doing.
snapped really quickly.
Okay. Secondly, it's Pavarotti. Pavarotti? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was saying Pavarotti.
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 Oh, I see.
Le capisci
Pavarotti. Now I see.
How are you worse than him and you're Italian?
Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Oh, you're a disgrace to all Italians.
Well, listen,
Manzi.
my family named me, I'm third generation Italian, and my family named me Joffrey Charles. So that should tell you something about, where they wanted me to go. I'm all
Joffrey
Anglican all the
Charles
time.
With a G.
Yes, I had a camp counselor who called me G of F instead of Jeff. Because I spell my name, folks, Geoff.
All right, sweetie, let's just give this kid just about the worst name possible.
Oh,
That's the worst we can get.
Says the guy named Dusty.
yeah, you thought my father was in my life? That's generous, thank you.
I'm playing with you.
All right, so here
I'm
we go,
named
folks.
after a city, so.
No, that's a great city. That holds Disneyland or Disney World, one of the two.
So let's talk about trauma.
So when are we gonna sing?
I'm exercising my ability to traumatize as we speak. Yeah, okay. So fair enough. That is the topic, trauma, a rather touchy topic. I'll say this in Orlando, you could co-sign this. A big turnout on Tuesday. I think we had something like 70 people. And I'm joking, that'd be a fire hazard. But we had a solid 25-ish people, and a lot of strong opinions. And I don't mean strong in the sense of strong arming people into forcing to hear what they say, but just a lot of people who are like respectfully saying, I really think this is what trauma is, or what trauma isn't. And so we can talk about what some people threw out there, and I don't know. I'm tempted to do plugs first. Should we do plugs first? I don't know.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Let's do some plugs. Yeah, let's plug it in.
I forgot I had something to plug. I forgot what it was.
Plug it in. Plug it in.
So do we actually have any plugs?
I do. I have a ton of plugs. That's why I'm
Okay,
bringing
you
it
go
up.
first.
I'll go first. Okay, folks. So 1 week from yesterday. So on November 13th, that's a Wednesday, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the Brazos Gallery. It's Crockett 140, folks. We have I know it's November, we have the first installment in the Contemporary Issues in Philosophy and Religion lecture series that we have every semester. This is by Dr. Marianne Sigmund, who is a part-time philosophy professor here at Richland College. She'll be presenting on, let me see here, leisure. Leisure time. What are you saying to me, Phil? So, do you guys know what leisure is? What's leisure?
It's what I do constantly because I have nothing to do with my life.
Okay, wrong. Leisure's a noun, not a verb. You can't do it.
Oh yeah,
What
you
is
can. Yes, you can
leisure?
absolutely turn.
Okay.
You can absolutely noun.
You do something leisurely, that's an adverb.
You can verbify nouns.
Okay, that's fair. You could denominalize nouns and make them verbs.
Get the heck out of here.
All right, so point being is this. Quick plug here. Shout out Marianne Sigmund. It's basically contending the following, that it's a classical, I would say, Aristotelian notion of what leisure is. Now, leisure means free time, essentially, and or time that isn't hurried or rushed. She's going to argue, a la Joseph Pieper, P-I-E-P-E-R, contemporary philosopher. He argues that, and she's kind of co-signing this, that if you don't have free time, it's impossible to be happy. That free time is a necessary... What are you laughing at me for? Get him, Allah, get him!
It's just your
You said her name
it's just your
wrong
dumb
first
rap-
off,
rap-
right?
Allah?
No, stop.
What's your name?
It's Ale.
No, it's not. You're messing with me.
I said it wrong too. I said it
Can
wrong.
we get her on the mic to defend herself?
What is it again? Oh wait. Ale. It's Ale. Ale. Ale.
It's two syllables. Emphasis on the second.
I
Ale.
said it wrong.
It's not hard.
I was trying to correct you, but I said it wrong.
It's nice to make your acquaintance. The point being is this, that people contend that it's impossible to get to know yourself and get to explore your interests and your passions unless you have free time. Unfortunately, in capitalistic society, quasi-capitalistic free market society here in America, you don't get a lot of free time, the majority of us. Usually we have, we're juggling a couple of part-time jobs. We're also taking classes. And if we do have free time, it's oftentimes on the weekends and we're exhausted. We don't have the energy to take advantage, you might say, of free time. So the idea here is this. In such a society, is it possible for people to be happy for the vast majority of the population? And again, this guy Pieper, who echoes Aristotle here, argues that without free time, you can't know yourself. And if you can't do that, then you can't be happy. You remember Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. So that'll be a great lecture, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., nice and early. Check that out, C140. Same day, November 13th, Wednesday. C140 is the lecture at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in Medina 216 Learning Center. Is the last installment, folks, in the Phenomenology Workshop series. It's been a hell of a run. Next one won't be till February. So September, I did a phenomenology. I lead this, of course. It's a phenomenology of memory workshop. That was September. Orlando, you were there, right? Oh, no, wait. You were there and then canceled. In October, we had phenomenology of forgetting.
I went.
That's the. Were you there? I don't remember.
forgot.
I forgot.
I got it.
Hey, and so the idea is this: a phenomenology workshop series. It's part of a study I'm conducting that I'll be publishing, and people who get involved in this workshop are my research subjects, I suppose. And so I'm going to ask y'all to engage in some mental activities, and then once you do that, you kind of describe them. And what I'm looking for is to see if there's any sort of unifying thread or any sort of universal connection between how all these different human beings engage in the same kind of phenomenon like remembering or forgetting. Now, Wednesdays, the 13th, workshop will be hoping, phenomenology of hope. Now, the idea is that we consider what it's like to set expectations for the future. What is it to do that? What entails the structural, I suppose, similarities among all human beings when they try to hope, when they think into the future, when they project into the future. Regardless of what the hopes might be, what is it to do that? So we'll be looking at that. It's 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Medina 216, extra credit for all philosophy students. And then, of course, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., C140. That's the lecture. Same date, Wednesday, November 13th. Then, of course, the big one, November 20th, 2 weeks from yesterday. The biggest event of the year, I would say, at least the semester, is the DCCCD Philosophy Undergraduate Student Conference. Also in the lovely Brazos Gallery in C140. That's where philosophy students from around the district, all 7 schools, will come to present. Orlando, you presented last semester, right?
Oh yeah,
What'd you present on?
I forgot.
It was you and your buddy.
Society.
Yeah, that was a good presentation.
Oh,
I was thinking about
yeah.
doing like a hermeneutic exercise.
I wanted to
That
do
would be
it
cool,
by
too.
myself, but
Are you referring to this podcast?
huh? Oh, of course.
So yeah, it's take a clue, Dusty, and leave. It's joking. It's my favorite thing in the semester because you get to see Dallas is a major city, a top 9 major metropolitan city in the entire country, and philosophy needs to be in those places, those urban places where things are happening and cultures being developed and established and reestablished. So philosophy is important, I think, specifically for this area. So when you see, various students from all 7 different colleges that comprise the DCCCD, and they're coming and they're, dressed professionally because it's a professional conference, and they present on whatever their work is. It could be something they're doing in class. It could be something more of a passion project. It's a beautiful thing to me. And I think it's something that Dallas needs and something that Dallas deserves. So check that out. It's going to be an all-day affair, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Brazos Gallery. That's Crockett 140. If you have class with me on that day, all of my classes will be at that conference. It's going to be pretty cool. Pretty cool. And, of course, it'll be recorded, so you get to watch yourself later. It's going to be fun. It's going to be visually and audibly recorded. All right, that's it for prompts for now.
Oh, wait, hold up.
That's it for plugs for now.
Wow, really? Really?
That was a Freudian slip.
Really? There aren't any
Here.
more. There aren't any more plugs.
Let me
are more.
plug something in real quick, Dusty, because you're way better at it than I am. I'll say that. So I just want to say shout out
sarcastic.
to Veterans Month because
yeah.
Donald Trump actually made Veterans Day into Veterans Month.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
actually wrote a little article for student media. So for the next one coming out, you guys want to check it out, read it, throw it away in the trash because it's trash.
No way.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and I'm
That's
interviewing
awesome.
a couple of the student veterans here as well. Devin, the guy who's joined us, he's a veteran, so I'm going to be interviewing him.
I don't think I met him.
Yeah.
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
You
yeah.
forgot.
Hey, isn't that phenomenal? That's awesome.
So yeah, so if you guys want to check it out, get to know the veterans here at Richland, I think it'd be pretty beneficial.
Me too.
Anyways, here you go. Dusty.
Solid plug.
yours.
Plug for as every Friday except for last one because I was gripped by sickness.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
By deaths.
It wasn't because Siegel canceled?
No, it wasn't because Siegel canceled. No, he just hasn't talked to me about it, I guess. But Fridays, 2 to 3, when the world turned, history time. It's time to get crazy with history. I'm telling it like it is.
I support it. I love the
History,
program.
it's not enough about the boys and the men. It's too much about the dry events, the day by day, the bullet point by bullet point. I'm making it personal. I'm bringing it close and I'm bringing it real tight. I'm bringing it right to your ears every Friday, 2 to 3 from KDUX Web Radio. That's when the world turned with your boy, Dusty Dean Hill.
That was the best plug I've ever heard in my life. That was fantastic.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, just hire me for.
Yeah, promotions.
See, there was no way I was going after that. So
I'll do it in a bunch of cool different accents too.
Yeah, you should make it kind of an old-timey radio thing where you're like you voice the characters. You're like, and then Hitler was like, hold the. Anyways.
Stanislav Petrov saw the error upon the radar screen and he said, "No, this will not be the day that I let the world burn." And then he didn't press the button. And then the world was saved.
good job, Manzi.
Thanks, Stanislav Petrov.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's address. Okay, before we go any further, we got to address the big elephant in the room. And I'm glad you're here, Ale, to get this on camera.
Jeez.
Yeah, big elephant in the room. You
Oh
have
yeah.
big
Also
white
shout out, Ale, 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 Ale.
And shout out the art club too. The art
Oh
club.
yeah, shout out Art Club.
Yeah, they
Collab.
successfully bribed the judges and won best decorated table at the
yeah.
at the preview day on
crime. Let's get it.
That was
Saturday. No,
the
I'm just
thing?
joking.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, there was, I didn't either. But
I mean,
congratulations!
they
to shout
killed
out-
it.
Dude,
They
they did
murdered
kill. I mean,
that.
it was crazy.
They
That was
murdered
so
that.
impressive. Like
was like,
really
wow.
awesome. And I don't want to take all the credit, but it was my design. So the elephant in the room. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, however you identify, I did get a haircut.
Oh.
I did
Amazing.
life-changing
Oh,
events.
I thought it
do
was the crippling weight gain.
I do it
That was
once
the
in a while.
elephant in the
That's
room.
I mean, that's crippling internally, according to my doctor.
Jeez.
Yeah. Anyways,
Is that what that is?
And his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
and his cholesterol
They
tripled
just
that
had
day.
some lice.
I did. Okay, I'll tell you what. Dusty makes a good point. I did come into the studio with cheesy bread for everybody. I went to Little Caesars. I could have gone wherever I wanted, and I thought, props to my weak will, because if nothing else, on a cold, just windy, wet day like today, nothing warms the body and the soul like melted mozzarella.
Do you
Am I
need
crazy?
a hug? It sounds like you really
The
need
cheesy bread. The cheesy bread is hugging me. By that I mean
sad.
it's strangling my arteries.
I can feel the oil in my intestines.
I'm Italian. My blood is olive oil. Hey.
But is good for you because it lubricates all of your internals.
That's
why
the
you
thing
eat it.
about oil. Olive oil.
You just gotta drink it raw.
What in the?
That'll do it, folks. You are listening. No, I'm joking. All right. So having said all that,
Now we've wasted 25 minutes not talking about trauma.
it's filler. PHIL. Get it?
I'm gonna kick that.
That was pretty good. Okay, let's get to the topic at hand here, and that is Kaylin Scoggins' absence. No, I'm joking. That would be, of course, trauma. Now, we could do a bit of recap if we'd like, although I'll be honest with you. It's going to be difficult to recap this one only because there were a shocking variety of positions on trauma, which I'm happy about, but I was not anticipating. Just a lot of different people identifying trauma in a lot of different ways. Not just how to like handle it or address it, but just
Well, to be
What
fair,
is it?
trauma is like defined in a lot of different ways.
That's very true.
It's like thumbtacks and nails. You
well,
could
I
have a
think-
bunch of different thumbtacks in your scalp, or you could have one big nail in your brain.
I feel like we all came to the same conclusion of what trauma is, though. I think we just had different takes on it.
That's interesting. So why do you say that?
Because
what would it be?
I think we all agreed that it's basically this life-changing moment that can, either be seen as a negative or a positive in some ways or another. Ultimately, in its
okay.
nature, it's negative because it's something that's bad that happens to you, and I think that's the foundation that we were on at that moment.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to emphasize was the pain aspect. Now again, no knock on anybody, of course, but a lot of people were quick to point out that trauma could be productive, and I do not at all disagree with that.
Yeah, productive is not equal to positive.
Okay, well, I'll be honest with you. I feel like they were trying to say maybe more along those lines. Like trauma could be maybe turned into something positive.
Yeah, I would say it could be turned productive, but being productive doesn't necessarily make it positive. Like I wouldn't like look back on a trauma just because it made me do my work and think, oh, so glad that happened to me, guys.
But
Thank goodness.
But some people do that, though.
Yeah,
That's what's interesting.
Couldn't somebody be grateful that they went through some kind of trauma, something that changed their life for the better?
Yeah. You hear people all the time be like, my life was very difficult and I wouldn't change a thing. It's like, well, what does that imply? That you would agree to live through all the traumatic aspects of life because it's made you who you are, it's shaped your identity.
Exactly.
That kind of
And
thing.
I think somebody made a good point to say it's kind of inevitable. I think we all go through trauma in some way or another.
I mean, yeah, you have so many days to live, so many days that something can mess up horribly.
But here's the other side.
Now
is that trauma or is that just inconvenience? I didn't mean to cut you off, Orlando.
No. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's trauma. I think all of us experience it to some extent.
Okay.
But I think somebody brought up a good point, and I think they said it was necessary for humans to develop. And I'm curious what you guys think about that. Like, is it really necessary for us?
Yeah, that's a good call. I forgot about that point.
Do you mean like in general, or do you mean? Because I'm thinking of it through like a loss of innocence scope. Like is it necessary for a loss of innocence to be traumatic? But
I would say, it depends on how you define trauma.
Yeah.
I would generally say yes.
Wait, what?
So okay, yeah. Dusty's in my loss of innocence honors learning community right now, which is a 6-credit class.
That's cute.
Taught by two professors, and I'll say this: the whole theme of the class is trying to define what a loss of innocence is, and so trauma is very, very related to that same question. Now, a loss of innocence implies that once upon a time you thought the world was a particular way, you thought that things are sort of predetermined or just set up in a way that's to your advantage, perhaps. And
Well, like, is the loss of innocence a good or bad thing?
that's Dusty.
Because
What'd you put on your midterm, Dusty?
It makes me
I
wonder.
put on my midterm that a loss of innocence is less like it's less like a single event that decides everything, and more like a something that can recur. You can
Paul recur.
I kind of define like an innocence.
Laugh at that, Dusty. That was a good joke.
Go to hell. I defined an innocence as essentially like a set of values that you hold.
Right.
And that is your innocence. And you can always have that rejected or turned against you, and that is a loss of innocence. But
And you can argue that is, to different degrees of trauma depending
Yeah.
on the extent of the loss.
like
but,
trauma could like force you to accept a new set of values.
oh, that's interesting. And that goes back to Orlando's question.
Isn't that innocence sort of a misled outlook on the world? Maybe you kind of thought things were a certain way, but then when you experience something different, you realized, oh, it's actually not that way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then, I don't see it as a bad thing at all. Then
It sounds like growth, right?
yeah,
I
it
don't
sounds like
see loss of
sounds like
innocence as a bad
progress.
thing.
Well,
It's something that's really like necessary for coming of age.
Yes, but here's the thing.
It helps you accept responsibility.
I feel like experiencing trauma doesn't necessarily result in a coming of age.
Yeah.
It depends on how you interpret the trauma. But the other thing is this, and this was the point I kind of kept repeating. When I say kept, I meant twice. That trauma equals pain. Like, you cannot ignore the fact that a traumatic event is it's suffering. It's painful. It could be physical. It could be emotional. It could be spiritual. It could be just intellectual, even, or a combination of these factors. But the other thing to consider is this: most psychologists, at least traditional psychology. So I'm thinking, psychoanalysis. Hey, what's up, dude?
Is it that?
Yeah.
Hey,
our,
what's up?
Hey, come on in. Yeah, grab a seat. You got the headphones there?
Yes, sir. I don't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Did he attend the club meeting?
He did not, but nonetheless, I'm sure he could weigh in on this. And so the idea then is this: that trauma, it can be very debilitating. That which does not kill you only makes you stronger or breaks your back, right? So a lot of people were talking about, especially childhood trauma, at the beginning of the club in particular. And that's interesting because childhood trauma, if you want to go real early childhood, it's hard to call that a loss of innocence because a child isn't aware of what it is. And yet we still categorize it as trauma.
It seems like the kind of thing that would really hang with you, instead of something that you can really confront, because at the time you didn't have like the proper mental capacity to understand it.
Yeah.
It seems like something you can only reflect on and not really build off of.
Relive.
And I think another conclusion that they came to about trauma is that we never really get over it. We only ever learn to cope with it.
Yeah.
And in coping with it, that's where we kind of develop this understanding of it.
So a lot to talk about. Do you agree with or disagree with any of those points that we kind of just listed? Do you think that trauma is nothing but the response to trauma is only coping? Do you think you can get over it?
I don't think necessarily you get over it because
trauma.
Gotcha.
because wouldn't you say that getting over it is kind of you forgetting about it? I think a lot of
Some cheesy bread. I found some cheesy bread.
Awesome cheesy bread. Oh, thank you.
My
I like
pleasure.
your haircut, by the way.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
I would think that getting over it is more like accepting it than forgetting about it. Because you definitely can't forget about trauma because it's so often like something that's kind of like a scar in your brain rather than just a cut.
I would,
isn't that coping?
right. Well, I would definitely agree that when you're getting over it, you've accepted that it happens and you've let it shape you. But when you initially hit the trauma, it really depends on the person. So when you're a child, a lot of it is more reactive, in my opinion. It's a lot more reactive in your emotions on how you take on it, because when you're a baby, all is you have emotions. You're going to cry. You're going to cry for what you want and everything. And then when you have a trauma incident happen, when you're about cognitive when you have cognitive awareness, you're going to know that, hey, this is going to make me sad. I don't know why, but I know this feels wrong, and that's going to have a deep impact because you don't know why, and all you can feel is this anger or sadness or this type of feeling that you're having because of the trauma that's going on. Later on in life, we talk about it. Either we go to therapy or we have therapeutic talk sessions with friends, family, and things like that. And then we learn to cope with it, as you were pointing out earlier, by accepting it and letting it shape us, whether that be good or whether that be bad. Or when you bottle it up inside, you internalize it. And then, you start having, it can be very, very self-destructive, where you can have the effects of being very, angry to react to things that you may not know why you're reacting into that way, but you may be trying to prevent something bad from happening. And you don't want to feel that feeling again when you initially had that first trauma.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's critical to point out that it's something that you have to face, like facing your demons essentially, because I feel like for people who decide to just try to forget about it or act like it doesn't happen, it's a certain denial that they live with in their life, and they kind of start to question like, well, what's going on with me? What is this sort of shadow that seems to loom behind my head? And it's that trauma. And it starts to affect them later on in life psychologically and socially, and people don't really realize it, or they don't think about it because they don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
And even in psychological terms, I think some people even choose to forget that memory, or they shape that memory with other images or other things. I don't remember. I'm not so sure about that, but I don't know.
Do you mean like creating false memories to explain trauma?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you go back to even the dream state of dealing with trauma, because yesterday I did an interview with a fellow veteran, and we were talking about how Trump made this Veterans Month, and we talk about the awareness that it brings to veterans who have gone through extreme circumstances, and some of us who have. And she was talking about how her brother had PTSD because he had gotten blown up. And so, with that instance, one thing of what he did to cope was they would either go skiing, or he would play hockey, or he would go outdoors, and they had a group that would participate in these activities because it was therapeutic. It helped them, deal with it because of the trauma that that had happened to them. And sometimes others, you have people who go through extreme circumstances, just outside the military. You got people who go through extreme circumstances, and then they have constant dreams about it, either going back to where the situation was, or how it could have been different, or how they failed in certain instances on what they didn't do. And I believe we mentioned this earlier, when you're asleep, your brain tries to solve problems that you may not be thinking about consciously, but subconsciously.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
I think that's sort of the self therapeutics. It's kind of almost, if you agree that there is such a thing as the unconscious, and you agree that dreams are meaningful and they're therefore interpretive. That's your mind trying to heal itself. And I brought this up too as well. It's of a piece. Thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting. But it's of a piece of what y'all are saying, which is that, I mean, some people can be heavily influenced by traumatic events that they have no recollection of, and as a result, live their entire life sort of under the influence of those early traumatic events and never even be aware of it, and in that sense, never come to really know themselves. I think that happens more often than it doesn't, frankly. And so this idea of therapeutics, so we have the president of the psychology club. She comes to all of our meetings. Shout out, and she brought up the idea again of talk therapy, which is the notion that again you can come to understand, or rather, how to put this, relive in a safer way. And I mean relive figuratively, of course. The events themselves, to better understand not just what happened, but what happened means to you. And how it sort of impacted you. And of course, there are different approaches to this. You have hypnosis and stuff like that, where they can put you under and try to get you to remember stuff. But it's all for the sake of therapy. It's all for the sake of healing. But this ties back to another point. Again, trauma is, you would think, bad because it's painful, and you. If given the option, I imagine most people would say, I don't want to be traumatized. And yet, this point came up that trauma is somehow human. It's part of the human experience to be traumatized. And in fact, that's exactly what Sigmund Freud argued, that every human is traumatized at a very, very, very young age.
So now I kind of want to throw something out there.
Please.
So I feel like we've associated trauma with pain, right? But couldn't you argue that trauma in some ways kind of just breaking some sort of capacity or some kind of boundary that you have in your mind?
I would agree. I would definitely agree.
And so just to bring this up, not like we were talking about maybe psychedelic drugs, maybe something like DMT or maybe even mushrooms, what's going on in your brain is that you're experiencing something that you've never experienced before. And so when you think about it like that, then I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to paint trauma with a negative connotation. Maybe it just depends on the context.
Well, how would that be traumatic if you're just kind of seeing stuff? Because that sounds like learning. That sounds like education. You see things you never saw before.
Well, can you argue that trauma is going to be a learning experience?
Oh, nice.
Well, that's the thing. I think it has the potential to be, but
I
it
would
need not
say
be.
that trauma.
It could be just pure suffering.
I want to remark when we said it was productive. I would say rather trauma is constructive, because of course when you construct something, it's either a grand cathedral or it's a gross wooden shack
or a weird podcast on Fridays. Yeah,
but it's absolutely got the potential to change you in a way that's positive or negative.
But here's the question: is it always associated with pain, or is it something that's simply just like it's breaking a certain boundary? I feel like,
well, if you go to you could from a medical standpoint, when you go, so I went on a ride along as an EMT years ago. And, we were recording instances, and I had to take heartbeats, blood pressure, all that stuff. And there were two categories when we go to a scene. Is it medical, meaning, drug related, or is it trauma, meaning there was an injury, maybe a blunt injury, lacerational injury, things in that. They call trauma and as an injury, treat it as that, as such.
Which is painful.
But as you had pointed out earlier, as actually two people pointed out earlier, both of you, not Orlando. Orlando, you didn't point it out.
Oh, wow.
He failed to point it out again.
No, but I love you, Orlando. But as
First time he's heard that.
Exactly.
but
That's
as you two pointed out, the trauma can be constructive and a learning experience, and so as the body has to heal, it has to learn how to be stronger. The bones have to be stronger. The muscles have to be tighter. You might have to relearn how to walk again, but your body has to adapt to heal that injury to make it tougher or stronger, so that it cannot go. It'll be more durable towards that injury. Working out, for example, you're tearing muscle fibers, and the muscle fibers rebuild in order so that you can be stronger and more fit. So. Trauma can be, trauma is, if you believe it, trauma is painful, but it also helps shape you because it can also be, a drive to not go back to certain experiences.
Well, the reason I kind of asked that was, I guess if we're talking about relating this to PTSD, what if there's a soldier who essentially experiences something like, let's say, some kind of getting into warfare, and they're seeing missiles or they're seeing all different kinds of debris, and they're experiencing things they've never experienced before. Mm-hmm. What if in that instance they're traumatized, not necessarily by the fact that they were shot or wounded, but rather they're traumatized by the event itself?
You're saying like they're going to freeze up during the moment?
Yeah. And so is that necessarily pain, or is it, what is that exactly?
That's more like a repeated trauma.
Right.
Like when they used to call it shell shock, that was when there would be such an intense, repeated bombardment constantly day and night that some people, by the end of the war, they couldn't really sleep without it. Mm-hmm. It's something that it's essentially like a pair of old leather shoes that you slip into, but they're like nails at the bottom. They get worn and almost comfortable, but there's still nails in them.
So the point I'm trying to make is
slipping in the leather
that
shoes?
essentially they're experiencing something they've never experienced before, and maybe didn't have the capability to experience that. And so that's the point I'm trying to make. There's no real association of pain there, nor physical pain. So
I can say this because this is how you kind of weed out. Well, yeah, you weed out the ones who ain't ready. So this goes back to the basic training. You're not a soldier, you're not a Marine, you're not a sailor, you're not an airman, you're not Coast Guardsman. I'm not gonna forget y'all. You're not them until you have graduated the basic training, and then and if you're going to be put into a situation where you might possibly have to go into war, there's further training that assists you in that. And so
that sounds like it's to keep you from being traumatized.
It's to keep you.
So couldn't you say though that
did we define pain in the philosophical sense?
Well, I mean, we could.
We can.
You're talking mental pain.
I'm talking
pain?
very traditional notions of pain, like mental, physical, spiritual, emotional,
unwanted
suffering.
Unwanted suffering. Yeah.
Unwanted.
Going back. So I know. We'll have so when we're low crawling, we'll have bullets fly over us, and you have people in your face yelling at you, and you're going to be told to do impossible tasks that you have to meet a deadline for. Sorry. And you're good. You don't bother me.
Usually I put it in the microphone. I don't want to interrupt you.
So you usually put through stressful situations, and it's supposed to either traumatize you a little bit, or you're supposed to say, okay, yeah, that doesn't bother me, I can keep going. And we're put, and every day it's not 9 to 5 you're doing this stuff. You're waking up before the sun rises, before the sun even thinks about rising over that horizon. And you're going to be doing this up until you see stars in the sky. You're put through physical, mental, and emotional stress with your team. And you're supposed to be shaped or groomed to see if you can make it. Can you adapt and conform to these standards, or can you not? Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen where people freeze up overseas. I'm not saying that. But when it does happen, that situation is blatantly noticed. Right. And when that person is under shell shock, they're going to be sent back home, and they're going to be looked under a mental review. There are steps that are in place, and then if that person is no longer fit to fight, then the military will take steps to deal with that justly. And when it's if you are fit to fight and you froze up, then you're still going to be dealt with accordingly. There is a review process,
and that's
that.
but that's because real quick. I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
That's specifically because their shell shocking might result in the death of other people.
Exactly,
because they're responsible for a lot of
So-
their cog in a very important machine.
Just to kind of pick off of that, so then is it you're being exposed to smaller increments of some sort of trauma in order for you to deal with something that might be more traumatic later on, right? And so once again, that's what I'm saying. Like, is that still associated with pain? Those smaller increments of trauma, like that's
Well, it's breaking you to see if you break right.
well, that's the point I'm trying to make. Is that essentially it's not I'm not associating it with pain, but rather it's like it's pushing a certain boundary in your mind, and that's kind of what I'm getting at.
But isn't that the definition of pain? You're being thrust into the unfamiliar.
Well, it also hurts.
Yeah.
It does hurt.
Yeah, and in the physical pain. Yeah. But here's something.
And
Look, I see what you're
there's
saying. Orlando.
notable mental
do.
pain that goes along with it.
But I mean,
Like
just
that's kind of the point. Like it's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to hurt you like in pretty much all the places so that so that it breaks you to see if you can heal in the right way. Like from what I've gathered is that it's supposed to break you down like so far mentally that you develop a like community with your fellow
soldiers.
soldiers, infantrymen, recruitmen, so that
You can think of the word soldiers. You have
You
a-
can
you have a
say-
war
you can
mic.
say-
I am
you can say
minded-
battle-
You can say battle buddies. You can say wingman. You can say all that.
So I guess, yeah.
The point being is this: if it didn't hurt, it wouldn't leave a lasting impact.
Yeah,
I think that's the idea.
absolutely.
And so, listen, look, if you have a personal trainer and they're pushing you to the max,
Yeah,
and it
feel the
hurts and it's
pain.
painful, yeah, exactly. Feel the pain, exactly.
I get where you're coming
No
from.
pain, no gain.
get
I mean,
where you're
you can't really call that traumatic. I mean, maybe nowadays if you want to level a lawsuit, but typically speaking, you wouldn't call that traumatic. You call that again beneficial to your health. Trauma seems to be something that happens when you're out of control, which is to say, something that is beyond your control impacts you in a way that is not pleasant, to say the very least. And unfortunately hits you in such a way where, and here's the key, in my opinion, it changes the way you understand the entire world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's the big thing. So when Dusty's talking about breaking, I think that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it changes your understanding of not just what you're capable of or not capable of, but what the world is capable of offering you and what it isn't. And that's the loss of innocence.
There you go.
Do you want to say something, Aliyah?
Oh my gosh, man! Just stop.
Introduce yourself.
That was
The mic's on. The mic's hot.
Do you want the Cheeto mic?
That's messed up.
And
It's Ale.
Alexa.
Ale.
Well, feel free to talk if you have any.
Cut it. You cut it.
Just
stop it. You
Just
don't let
correct
hang.
it. Just say.
Ale.
Just talk to the mic to correct it. How about that?
Mouth right on the mic, real close.
You're an artist. Do you have anything to say on stuff like this? You designed the trauma poster. By the way, she's in charge of all of our artwork in the Instagram accounts as well as others.
I
So,
got you.
Awesome.
Yeah, you don't want the Cheeto mic. That one's kind of gross.
yeah, Jack, there's a mic that's covered in Cheeto dust. You should be aware.
Yeah,
of this. I
Mike,
think it's
watch
mic.
out.
I think it's mic 4.
Oh, it's nasty.
Nancy's been sneaking in here to wipe his Cheeto fingers on the microphones. Rat-like tendencies. Just spread
As long as it
disease.
doesn't fart on it.
Or, push it into his mouth to burp into it.
Yeah.
Rude.
Oh, jeez. You can take me
Natural's bodily.
take me out of the
There
frame.
you go, right there, right there.
Take me out of the frame. We'll
Perfect.
Here,
You
should be
just-
yourselves here.
Here, let me just.
That's not going to work, dude.
slip out right quick. Here,
Also, the echo is going to be terrible. And I'm going to have to listen to your voice twice.
perfect.
Yeah, it's,
There you go. This is how I want it.
so it's supposed to be Ale. He's the only one saying it.
I don't think the mic is on.
Oh, it's on.
It is
You just
on.
gotta
Okay, sick.
put your mouth closer to the mic.
Oh, yeah, it comes in.
Stop hiding, Orlando.
I don't want to be in this.
Yes, you do.
What are you afraid of?
Live.
Anyways, exactly. So what's up?
So my name is Ala. So it should be Ala, no H in the end, as everybody's saying. And I'm an art student. I am lately enjoying my time with the philosophy club so much since I started reading lately.
Glad to hear that.
I am the one who doing the artworks for every week for the topics they talk about, and that's all.
Any thoughts on trauma? Like, so when you designed the piece for trauma, I mean, what were you drawing on? Like literally, what were you drawing on? Bennett. She doesn't draw, but anyways.
So my idea for the piece was that not from my experience, but from the other people's experience and the stories that I heard before about that topic, it's usually something, as you guys talk, usually like in really young age that that affected the person's life after. And I don't agree with the part that it can be a happy thing or it's not usually something sad. And also I don't agree with the idea that it's it can be taking not negative. It's usually negative, and it usually affects the person's life negatively. Or it's about war and whatever, but I never heard stories from actual people that I met about that part, so I cannot talk about it. So the piece was mostly discussing the traumas that children go through when they are young. Either it's a family, it's like a family issue, or sexual issues, or diseases that they like had when they were young and that affected their life as like in a certain way, stuff like that. And I'm sorry that I'm not good with the wording. I'm an artist. I'm not good with that.
No, you're doing
You're
great.
doing
Honestly,
You
that
were
was
fine.
awesome. Yeah.
Way better than Dusty. Anyways, I think so. It seems like you're arguing, and there someone else, Eva from the art club as well, and I think she was trying to make this point also in the philosophy club meeting on Tuesday that trauma is what you make of it. Mm-hmm. Which is a very artistic way to put it, but there might really be something to that.
Actually, I believe that if you use the trauma that you went through, talked about it, that's the first step to get over it. You need to talk about it. Because some people actually have good advices for you to turn the whole situation not negatively. So it's either you learn from it and talk about it and get over the idea, or you will be trapped for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And the most part, that will not go well.
What about those who?
We're all just like, geez.
Well,
We're all thinking about our own
I
lives.
think the key word with dealing with trauma is resiliency. And resiliency is how well you can bounce back from a situation that that you went through. Exactly. So when you do have people who maybe aren't good with words, mm-hmm. and they can't really talk about it, mm-hmm. but they do things that make them feel good or help them, mm-hmm. Deal with it. Whether the self-therapeutic, as we were talking about earlier, mm-hmm. That can benefit their well-being, and those who have the who have gone through the trauma and who didn't have the opportunity to talk about it or to be self-therapeutic. For me, I've seen people who didn't have the resources to do those things that were self-therapeutic, and that they had somebody to talk to. They just kept it pushing, and one of those people are my wife. She had lost her parents, and first of all, she never knew her dad, and he died before she was born. And then mom died of cancer while she was still in grade school. She was 11, 12 years old. Yeah. She didn't have, and the family didn't deal with it by talking about it. They literally just kept it pushing. And if you meet her right now, you would never know about it.
Well, that's interesting.
I believe
that's
it's
amazing
very
story.
important to it's good that she talked about it when she was old though.
No, I had to
She
pry
just
it
called
out
your
of her.
wife old.
Yeah, so
I
I wanted to
Well,
ask,
she has an old soul, but
I wanted to ask you,
That's a
Devin.
great
I wanted to ask,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things do you think that helped her kind of deal with it, or rather,
Yeah.
understand it?
So in the household, money had to get into the house. She's living with her her grandmother, and she never got to really live a childhood. She had to work. Her brother had to work. Her cousins who were living with her had to work, and everybody had to bring in money. And so they knew what the score was, and she had to find all of this out on her own. Nobody was helping her. She didn't know she had to file death certificates. She didn't know anything about claiming to be an orphan. No information was being brought to her. So everything she did, she had to learn on her own. So basically, life hit her at an early age before she could, deal with the trauma. And she still deals with it now, but she still never talked to a therapist about it. And she barely talks to anybody about it. I'm the one who really pries it out of her, and I'm still breaking that shell, and it's worth it. But
it's a hard shell.
It's a hard shell. Like she's very hardened, and showing affection isn't something that she does, and so I have to walk her through. Yeah, exactly. Encourage her and walk her through it.
That's one of the things that I think can be productive about trauma is that it helps you understand other people's trauma.
Yeah.
Is that like a lot of people, if you haven't gone through trauma, you just can't fathom it. You can't fathom something so horrifying that it just digs into your brain for the rest of your life. But if you do go through trauma, then you can connect with other people who've experienced that in a way that like perhaps their family can't understand. And that's often where like the biggest source of misunderstanding comes from is your family when they haven't experienced something or any kind of trauma like you have.
And it compounds it.
That's
maybe.
interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can find commonality in pain with people.
Yeah.
And that's
That's where group therapy comes in.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not even necessarily the same exact source of pain, but just dealing with traumatic stuff in general. Because earlier we were considering the idea that all human beings are on some level traumatized, or you become traumatized as part of just what the human condition is in whatever way it happens to happen. But now it sounds like, when you're saying stuff like your family doesn't understand and people don't understand, well, how could it be that everybody undergoes it, but not everybody can relate to it?
Right. And I don't want to cut anybody off. I'm sorry. But I think
I'd rather hear you talk than all of them.
I think in addition to everybody having gone through trauma, I think we ourselves have caused a trauma on others, whether it was we know it or not.
Yeah, that came up too. I forgot about that. The idea that you can inflict trauma on somebody without realizing it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me.
You're gonna hate me after this, but like people are gonna hate me after this. But one thing that I know I did that may have inflicted trauma on somebody. I broke up with somebody on Valentine's Day.
That's not even that bad, bro.
No.
That can be traumatic, yeah.
No, but here's
I
the thing.
guess,
Here's the thing. I broke up with them on Valentine's Day, and it was in the morning before class. But a flower had been sent to them.
Oh, wow.
Like after I had broken up with them, and I
like
had
you're messing
forgotten
with
about
them.
it.
That's not that
I had
bad.
forgotten about it, and it had been sent,
That's
and
kinda
she
bad.
just bawled
think it
out
is.
in
Yeah.
class.
I don't
So
think
I
it
was
is.
like,
It really
God.
depends on the person. Like people can be more easily affected towards trauma than other
That's
people
true.
can.
Well, if I could just defend how you treated my cousin, let me just say this. I think that we have her in studio right now.
She's a ghost.
She's a ghost.
Whoa,
that was dark.
so far.
Wow, that was like a
said
50-50
Orlando
as to
said
whether Manzi was gonna start crying or not.
Oh, geez. See, like I didn't even realize that's what that was. but-
Should have given that one a second to ruminate.
Well, that's how we know each other. So you broke my cousin's heart on Valentine's Day. No,
Oh.
the point being is this, as far as I can tell, that you might have okay intentions or good intentions, and yet you don't really know a person's history. You don't really know a person's backstory, and oftentimes, even if you understand, well, anybody would find this to be, upsetting, you don't know to what extent and why. I mean, that's I think the interesting thing about, and this came up as well. That's the interesting thing about taking psychological approaches to both understanding, like unpacking trauma, and then trying to reconcile yourself with it, is that it's so individualistic.
True.
It's so context dependent that look, like another plug. I'm about to publish a book chapter. It's coming out soon, and it's on. It has something to do with trauma. It's de-radicalization from extremist groups. And so what we did was, me and my co-authors, they interviewed a couple of several people, and then we sort of analyzed it to try to get at, well, what kind of traumatic event would compel one to join a radicalized group, and is healing or coming to terms with the trauma the way out of such extremist groups? And what we discovered, long story short, is that there is no one size fits all. And I want to get your opinion on this because I imagine the reason why we're kind of writing this, we wrote this study was because we're trying to deal with, on the one hand, all the people who suffer, all the soldiers who suffer from PTSD. And is there a way to sort of put them all into a single kind of systemized, this will heal you sort of thing? Like, you put people in physical therapy, if everybody breaks a wrist, the certain exercises that help you heal your wrist. It's universal. But if you break your psyche or something along these lines, if you're traumatized, what we found is there is no really universal one size fits all, do these things and then you're healed. It goes deeper to all the way to the core of the individual, which makes, therapy for people who are traumatized like this, hard to come by. The quality of therapy hard to come by. And so the healing process even more difficult to come by, which is what our findings are. And we'll see how it's received in the greater academic community. We're expecting that well, but not because of anything we did, but just because I think those results are hard for a lot of people. And I think that's part of the deal is that, and this is why I want your opinion. Do you think that there's a way to sort of help everybody in the same way overcome things like PTSD, or do you think it really does have to do with the individual person?
It's going to matter on the...
Or both, I guess.
Okay, so let me see if I can put this, because I want to choose my words carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is...
Dead air.
There is a... Everybody's going to go through, when we do get sent overseas and we do what we do, everybody's going to see different things at different times and deal with it with different ways. And, there's training we all go through. There's exams we all get evaluated on. There's a series of questions for
psychological exams?
Psychological exams, yeah. And we have to, there's always a series of questions that every single one of us are being asked the same question because they're looking for specific things that might trigger you. And it goes from, diet and exercise to how often are you having relations with a person, to if you are being protected during those relations. And they really want to dive into the complexity and psyche of an individual.
What do you mean by relations?
Now, I don't know if we're allowed to say it on the show.
Don't say it.
So
you can say it. It's okay.
Oh, I can say it.
Dusty wouldn't understand what you mean.
Okay. So they'll ask how often you're having sex. How often are are you having protected sex? They really try to get into your life because
your personal details.
Your very, very personal details.
Interesting.
And whether you're truthful or or not is upon the individual. But I believe that the people in the military have integrity, and so they'll answer it as truthful as possible. But they want to look for those psychological triggers to see, okay, what might have led him to this? Okay, this year he or she was doing this, but in the past week or so, it changed drastically, or this might have changed drastically. And so they'll even ask you, were there any traumatic events that you've experienced? And, a lot of us are afraid of getting kicked out because... I was
going to say,
because we still want to serve.
Yeah.
We don't want to be, known as that crazy soldier, crazy airman, crazy Marine, crazy sailor, that you can't go into battle with. We want to be mentally tough, mentally fit, and we want to, be put back into the fight.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to let yourself down in a certain sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, and some people may need more help than others, but that doesn't make them weaker. That just means they have to deal with it a different way than, you may have dealt with it. So, for example, if I have somebody who's gone overseas and, has seen traumatic things, they're going to come back and they're going to train the next generation of soldiers, whatever branch you're in. I'm in Air Force. I was going to say airmen. They're going to come back. They're going to come back and train them because they're fresh off the scene. They know exactly what's going on. So they're going to train them, saying, "Hey, you got to be prepared for this. You're going to be prepared for that," and they're going to drill it into you. And
it's going to be based upon their.
It's going to be based upon what they've seen. They've seen their friends die right next to them, so they're going to be hard on you.
But could you apply that to parenting too? Do you think if you're a parent and once before you're a parent you were a child and you experienced trauma, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, or you saw your friends go through it, isn't that going to have the same sort of effect where you're going to raise your kid and you're going to, how to put this, be fighting yourself maybe on some level, or you're going to be subjecting your children to traumatic events that maybe you're not fully cognizant of,
Well, yeah,
that
that's
you're
why,
still victim of.
That's why like a lot of kids are abused by parents who have also been abused. Like it's called the cycle of abuse.
Right,
And when you don't break it, then you're probably going to be bound to abuse your children, whether you realize it or not.
So how's trauma not negative?
I
said it was negative, but I said it was constructive.
I think that's a good point to
Exactly.
make, but I think that'll happen to people who don't. Once again, they don't reflect on themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a very good point you make. Because people who are essentially desensitized to that kind of behavior, and it's so normal to them, to talk a certain way, to be aggressive towards a person, and so then they'll look at their other relationships and be like, oh yeah, well it was okay because my dad did this or my mom did this to me, so it's okay if I do it to other people.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like a social norm for them.
Like this is just how love is shown to me.
Exactly. And so
Or they will be too protective for their kids and ruin their life also, but on the other perspective.
yeah,
That's interesting too. Completely protective. Yeah.
You remember the thing, you can raise 6 kids in the same household the exact same way and all of them turn out different.
Yeah.
for sure. And I think it goes back to the question that you asked, Manzi. Like, can we ever develop a system to get every single person? I think that's a very difficult thing.
I think it's impossible.
I think it's impossible as well, because everybody deals with it differently, and it all depends on their perspective that is so individualistic to them, And so for us to get every single person, it's not possible.
Like even something so simple as asking, "Have you been traumatized?" can be approached from a million different ways.
And I feel like it takes a certain amount of trust, a certain amount of willingness on the other person as well. And it's like, can you get that from someone? How can you get someone to trust you who's never trusted anyone?
Right.
Yeah.
And then and it's kind of sad when those people who actually need help, it's a very complex system on how you've got to help this person, because I don't believe there's ever going to be a one size fits all like a glove, because even when you have that, one size fits all that's elastic, what if somebody has really, really small hands?
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
or really, really big hands. So if when you do have people who may need years and years of therapy, and then this person could get it over with in a less time frame, people will say, well, it's exhausting to having to deal with this certain issue that's taking so long. Is there a better way, a more efficient way to do it? Is there and this person actually just needs that time.
Yeah.
And then, there are some people who actually may have gotten over it, but because it was so good, they don't want to leave, or they want to still get the benefits, and that's going to ruin it for the person who actually needs the help for that longer period of time.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I feel like that's why you can never really make or coerce a person to get over it. It's like you can only ever give them the tools to get over it for themselves on their own.
But that's hard when you're watching somebody.
And that's the point, is that
not
like,
do it.
how do you identify the tools, or whether they have it or if they don't? What are the tools? These are the things that.
And sometimes it's not even. Sometimes that individual may be so broken or so messed up that they can't really use the tools. I mean, you could give me a hammer you could give me a hammer and a nail to hang up a frame, but if I don't have any hands, how am I going to do it? I can't necessarily hammer with my toes.
Yeah, or maybe you learn to adapt. I mean, here's the other side of it, and this goes back to, I think, a point you made, Dusty, of coping, which is to say that, or somebody else made it as well in the club meeting, but look, there are people, there are patients, clients in the psychology world that are referred to as lifers. And that means, hey, the stuff that you've endured when you were younger, you won't get over it. It's just about addressing it every week and just coming to terms with it and reminding yourself that certain things trigger your behavior in an unproductive way or an unhealthy way, and figuring out, putting in sort of mechanisms that keep you from impulsively reacting due to the trauma enforced, again, mechanisms. And so it's like, it's not something, it's like this. If you have sciatica, if you have permanent back pain, there is no surgery you can have to cure it. It's just, you live with back pain for the rest of your life now.
Yeah.
And you just have to cope. What'd you say?
To any kind of chronic pain.
Exactly.
That stuff scares me.
But that's what trauma is. It's chronic psychological pain.
And
I just defined it.
I had a friend that had that. I think another
friend.
One friend. That's how many friends I have. Yeah.
Well, do I make 2, or am I that half?
You're the one. No,
Yeah, you're the one. You're his best friend.
I think a negative consequence that comes from this trauma is like alienation. Is that because people start to kind of shell themselves in, they're like, oh man, nobody understands me, nobody knows what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so critical for us to have empathy towards others, you know?
Absolutely.
Just recently I saw a quote. It was like, when you think of I and my too much, you lose the capacity to think of we and us. And I think that's a real issue, you know, is that often we'll look at someone who feels like, you know, who's I guess an outcast, and we'll be like, oh, that guy's just a loser or something, you know. And we don't.
What a Dusty.
We don't. we don't think twice about it.
That was for the weight comment. Anyways,
but I think.
he doesn't like me.
The look is enough.
I
just realized that.
No, you're making a good point, Orlando. I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's
You're making a
okay.
good point.
It's okay.
I just realized
Your
I have
first
the
one.
Cheeto mic.
It's cool.
Cheeto Mike.
There might be a few going around, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I said, Manzi spreading it.
Exactly. Spreading the cheese.
Gross.
All right, that sounded weird. All right. So yeah, this idea of forgetting about the we and us. But what's also so interesting is that oftentimes those who are alienated will found their own little subcultures.
True.
I mean, that's what things like. Honestly, that's what things like. I imagine. I don't know.
Help groups.
Well, I
Yeah,
think that's why
AA,
social
NA, stuff
cohesion
like
is
that.
necessary at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea. Is that in order to overcome trauma, it's not something you can do by yourself.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask about the extremist groups thing that you were talking about. Like, what kind of extremist groups are we talking?
These are specifically white supremacist groups.
Oh, okay.
So we're interviewing people who were formerly neo-Nazis who have left the group. And so we're trying to figure out psychologically what are the motivational factors behind leaving a radicalized group.
I
Which
mean,
in
that,
turn-
doesn't that
that
have
can technically be like a traumatic help group, too.
Yeah,
Doesn't that have to do with identity a little bit?
It
I
certainly
feel like
does.
for
Totally,
them, it's
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
like,
the white identity.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, I'm white, so that's my identity, and I'm
That's
great
because
for
they
that.
have like that's like the one thing they can really grip to that's
Exactly.
solid for them.
Exactly.
You'd be
It's what you see with a lot of those kind of like extreme hate groups, like incels,
Yeah.
or especially like white supremacists. It's like they have a single identity, and it's the only thing they can attach to themselves, and they just latch onto it and they won't let go. And when other people try to take it away from them or in any way, then they will lash out madly.
Exactly.
And these are, but you know, the people I think that's generally correct. And the people we're interviewing are people who, of their own accord, left the group, and so a lot of it has to be secret because if you leave certain groups like that, there's a bounty on you because you're betraying them. So it's like what we've come to find at least is that of like the 9 people we've interviewed.
Just yell away. Just yell.
Oh, do you want to say something? I'm sorry, no, I didn't realize. Yeah, please.
Actually, yesterday I was watching a movie talking about the same story you were talking about, which
American
is
History X?
Yes, I watched
There it
it
is.
yesterday.
fantastic
That curb
Oh
stomp
my
scene really
God.
gets you.
I did not know anything about that. Actually, it relates all to what you're talking right now.
Put your mouth on the curb, boy.
Yeah, and
Marches.
and you know, going to the traumatic experience, you know, the psyche of you know, those who have been traumatized, you know, when they feel alienated because they say, you know, nobody knows what I'm going through. If you kind of read between the lines, they're saying, look at all these happy people. They don't know how miserable they should be, and you know,
That's how I begin my
I'm-
semesters.
And maybe that has to do with a lack of empathy on their part as well.
Yeah.
Understanding that other people go through things as well. Maybe not to the same degree, but definitely.
hardly ever, which is what makes it so alienating.
Yeah, there's often like a value assigned to trauma, or people tend to. What's like the verb for value? I want to say
your pain is not
Evaluate?
your pain is not.
Thank you.
They try to hierarchy the pain, say my pain is greater than your pain, and your pain is not as good as my pain, and you know
That's
we're
awesome,
comparing
no.
traumatic experiences, and in you know in a certain sense, some people do have to be put in their place and saying, okay, look, yes, this pain was greater than, you know, pricking a finger. You know, that may have been traumatic for you, but would you have rather gone through what I'm going through?
Yeah.
Or would you rather have had that prickly finger? I'll take the prickly finger, please.
Absolutely.
You know, because there are traumatic experiences that some people would never want to go through. Never.
That reminds me of a quote. I think it was by Plato. I don't remember, but they said that people are usually can identify others that are smarter and more intelligent than them, but they can never admit to themselves that there's others that are wiser than they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what a point you were making there.
I think so. And look, just to put a bow on this, the only reason I brought up the whole book chapter thing is because what we found is that a lot of these, everybody that we've interviewed, they had very traumatic backgrounds. And kind of going back to what you were saying, Dusty, they were looking to these groups to fulfill sort of childhood needs that never were met. And then when they figured out that the group wouldn't fulfill those, that's when they left. They were trying to heal themselves in obviously a very misguided way. But that's kind of what it was. And so it's like when people are de-radicalizing, the other reason we published this and we were asked to research this is because, I mean, there are a lot of young American citizens who are like radicalizing towards some very hateful groups. And so, what causes that? And the causes are infinite, and the healing process is equally infinite in that way. Like, it's very particular. One more thing I want to say about trauma too, kind of, and then a bit of a positive note, I suppose, is that a lot of people talk about or try to define genius, and a lot of people will say a genius is something, or tortured artist might be another way to put this too, Allah, and that's to say that if it weren't for the traumatic experiences, they wouldn't have been able to tap into a part of themselves that are creative or innovative or self-expressive. And in that sense, it's not that they are thankful for the trauma, but they're like, hey, without the trauma, I wouldn't be who I am today. I mean, is that a fair trade, would you say? Is that a worthwhile trade? You would say yes?
Yes, I agree 100% with that.
Okay, let's get traumatized.
With the stories I heard from people and the most of the artists that I think that they are great now or back then, they have a background story for their life, and it's usually trauma.
But a miserable life they led, no?
But they make great art. It doesn't matter. It's worth it.
Yeah,
in my experience, yes, it's worth it.
There's
whatever. If it's like a family thing, if it's I never met anybody with a military kind of experience, but the people who had other issues, they are great. And some of them are grateful for that particular
trauma,
yeah.
I watched a documentary about a woman who made herself go blind. Like she literally stabbed herself in the face to go blind. Because she felt as though that kind of trauma would produce some sort of perspective that she was looking to sort of maybe maximize, and she also felt like she was meant to be blind, which I don't know what that's about.
Wow.
But I mean, I bring that up for the following reason. That could be the danger, is that I think you have a lot of people who maybe are majoring in arts, and they're like, I can't be a good artist. I come from too healthy of a background.
No, I don't support that at all.
I'm not saying I support that. I'm just saying I think you find that.
Yeah.
There's to continue on the tortured artist line, I guess. I was thinking more towards like a tortured piece of art is this painting by my favorite painter, Ilya Repin, called The Portrait of Vsevolod Mikhailovich Garshin. And in the painting, it's just a painting of a dude. It's just a portrait. But since Ilya Repin is a very photorealist artist, and the Russians get this right every time. If you look at his eyes, you can see something in there, and you can only understand like if you're looking at it. But once you learn the context of the painting, the fact that the man in that painting killed himself a week after getting it, you can see it in his eyes.
Jesus.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
There's you can see that trauma in the portrait. I think that's like kind of the reverse. Rather from the tortured artist, it's the tortured art.
We should post that.
It's
on the Facebook
painfully
page.
beautiful to look at it with that knowledge.
I'm gonna play, well, not devil's advocate, but I'm gonna say there are traumatic experiences that do help people for the better, and they produce some beautiful pieces, whether it be in the art. But I'm here to say that there's trauma experiences that we're ignoring, as far like, so God forbid anybody gets raped, God forbid. But there are traumatic experiences that leave people with burdens. There are people that lose their lives over it, and they're not better for it. Some people, who, I've talked about it, I've gone to groups, and it just hasn't helped me. I've turned to drugs, and that was more helpful than I've turned to drugs and alcohol, and that was more helpful than the group therapy sessions. And God forbid, people, go through that. I don't, bless them.
It's a spiral.
It's a spiral, yeah. And you have people who also, they go to hate groups. They've gotten the burdens. They've gone through this grief. They've gone through traumatic experiences, and they're not better for it. There are if you go to hospitals and you actually see certain things that people have gone through, and then the lives they live now, someone has to wipe them, bathe them, reach for things for them. Somebody comes out with somebody who's born with 4 limbs now has 2, and they can't do the things that they want to do anymore. They're very limited. The mind that they used to have, a beautiful mind, and they were very smart, they're very intelligent. Then they go through something traumatic, and now they're in an insane asylum. Yeah. There are experiences that we are ignoring or we haven't considered, that people go through, and they're not better for it because of the traumatic experiences. Yeah. They are a lot worse off than when they start than when they started,
and they only get worse.
I have 2 comments on that. The first one, that I believe that some people we were talking about the ones that use the trauma to make good art. But some people cannot get out of the trauma or get over the trauma until they do something with it. So some people use art to get over what they've been through.
Art therapy.
Yeah, that's one. Second, commenting on the people that we're not looking for, some people does not get through some parts of their life based on that trauma. So it's not that they are sad or cannot live their life or whatever, but for example, if they went through like a whole family traumas, they are not able to make a family, but they are good at everything else. They are working, they are going out, they have friends, but they cannot get over this part. Oh, yeah, same with sexual harassments or the rape or stuff like that. They cannot have husbands or like a family.
Right.
Yeah, these are not, people are not taken care of, I guess.
Yeah, but I think your point is that, generally normal, but there's a particular compartmentalized aspect of their lives that they cannot even begin to touch. It's too hot. Yeah, well, yeah, I think you see that more often than not, honestly. And that's kind of what therapy is. It's like, hey, let's integrate this aspect of yourself that's been cut off into the rest of you.
Yeah.
But I think you're also right as well, too, Devin. It's this idea that there's some, and it's not necessarily the trauma itself. It has to do with the person who's experiencing it, and that person's strengths or weaknesses or whatever. That could be again really, really debilitating. I have people in my family that are like this, really debilitating, and there doesn't seem to be a way out.
Right, and I'm because I'm thinking about people who are in impoverished neighborhoods who don't have the opportunities. They're a lot of them are great artists. A lot of them are great, performers. A lot of them are, great athletes. And because of the traumatic experiences, because you got to put food on the table and food in the house, you're not going to have those opportunities, and you got to start making choices and start making decisions. Randy Moss is from West Virginia, and there is a town that he's from that doesn't have a college, doesn't have a city government, but it has a population. And when he was going through his high school, he like everybody on his football team were multi-sport athletes, and he ended up being an NFL superstar. But all of them go to it's their town name, and then they say university, and all it is going next to a 7-Eleven, drinking, and just literally playing craps, and the 7-Eleven is literally the only place for employment. And it's a small town. They literally cannot go. They don't go anywhere because they can't go anywhere. They don't know anybody like that. They don't know, the information to go out there. There's no Wi-Fi out there. There's barely a television. There's barely television signals. There's no Apple store. There's nothing out there. And yet he had to find a way to get out, and he was lucky enough to get out, but he still got in trouble. He still got in trouble while he was there. He got in trouble while he was in. And a lot of people in that town go, get locked up, go to prison. And one person who came from a very good home, actually didn't end up going to the NFL because he made one stupid decision. And the trauma can go either way, and sometimes it's not always based on the person. Sometimes it's based on the environment and society.
And survivor's guilt can be traumatic, which is maybe what T.O. has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, And any other thoughts on this stuff on trauma? Should we do a final thoughts segment?
You guys made me think about art therapy.
Yeah.
I want to help people with that.
Yeah, it was me in particular, but yeah.
We're gonna give him all the credit. Nope, it was Orlando. Orlando's the quietest one. He gave you the idea. Isn't that right, Orlando?
What?
Anyways,
I'll give a finishing thought for myself.
yeah, please. Yeah.
I think when it comes to trauma, there's two parties. I think as an individual,
Republican, Democrat.
that's funny. As an individual, if you're going through something and you feel alone, you should understand you're not alone. You should understand that there's perseverance in yourself, and you should have honor in yourself, and you should understand that you can make it through. And often it feels impossible, but it's not. And I think on the other part, as a person, that you can understand that others are going through things, you should always look to see how you can help others. Because often people will feel alienated, and often there'll be people that are smiling, people who are acting so normal, but you'll never even know it.
Also, statistically, you are not alone.
That's true too.
There are millions of people on the planet.
But the more people you come into contact with, the more likely you are to be traumatized, right?
I mean, yeah.
So should you protect yourself by ignoring everybody else?
I mean,
as we've
every
already
second that you
explained-
exist in this world is a second exposed to pain.
And as we explained,
So-
traumatization
Make
is
that the first
almost
sentence of your
necessary
essay.
for humans to develop.
Yes. Okay. I feel we didn't give Orlando's point a fair shake here, because I do think ultimately I agree with you
My point.
that trauma can very much be used in a way that helps you come to new understandings of yourself that otherwise you never would have.
It's not my only point. I'm just saying that that's
It's the only point you've ever
made.
made.
Yeah. Okay.
He really wants to hit me. I can tell. Anyways,
Okay.
He'll hit you with a smile. That's what it'll do.
That's what he does.
He'll just smile and you'll just be like, ha ha.
He comes
Good
across.
smile.
Orlando comes across as
Dusty,
so
you're
nice.
awesome too, by the way.
No, yeah. Well, I don't know about I don't go that far. But Orlando
It's all
comes
I
across
can
as
do.
so sweet on this radio show. You should see him in class. He's a shark, dude.
Yeah,
He's a shark. He cuts
He said some horrible things.
No, I
I've
mean,
heard him say
in a way
horrible,
like
controversial things.
he's very generous with people when they're making their points in this class, and or in this podcast.
No.
That was a funny Freudian slip. And you're very generous in the philosophy club, but dude, get this kid in a classroom environment, and he's like, he will not let you skate by.
I can't believe the
Including
words
me.
I've heard
Including
say that come out of his mouth.
It's
The
it's
horrible
impressive.
offenses.
Uh,
I can't believe it.
You had a point to make,
Ale.
Ale?
Okay, yeah, I wanted to say something. Speaking of the alienated people due to the traumas, I guess one of the things that can help but talking to people is books. If we provided a good platform or a good resource for situations like that, people can get help without having to talk or get their life revealed to other people. And they can get better, or at least accept the idea of talking.
Healing through narrative,
Yeah,
Dusty.
because you can read a book by yourself, get through the idea by yourself. You don't have to talk to people, which is I guess the first step.
God, just don't
Maybe?
give them rules of attraction.
No, I mean, honestly, don't read Crime and Punishment. I'm just going to say that.
What?
Well, it's a good book. Come
It's a
on.
good book. It's depressing as
No,
hell.
definitely.
Yeah, give them something like, I don't know, The Way of Kings. Just give them a fantasy novel, something to escape into.
Exactly. I
There's
think so. I
there's a
agree.
whole
Harry
field.
Potter.
There's a whole field of therapy called narrative psychotherapy. It's everything you just described.
I guess,
Yeah.
I guess that will be the greatest.
It's cool you're
solution
into that
in
though.
perspective.
You could also escape into religion. That's what I've seen a lot of people
It's
do.
a giant narrative.
Yeah, definitely.
You could also be traumatized by religion,
Yeah.
which I've also witnessed.
Yeah, thanks, Catholic Church. Call out.
That, trust me.
But that's often what I see from the most religious people I know is that they've often experienced a trauma, and that's then their escape.
I agree.
Is
with
it's
that. My friend is
it's
like that.
kind of like the white supremacy thing. It's one of the few things that you can grab onto and you hold onto it for dear life.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. But at the same time, it's also I give credit to those who we interviewed because they realized on some level that it wasn't masking the trauma. It was actually in some ways exacerbating it. But not everybody comes to that realization. There's some people, and I think you were getting at this as well. This idea that if we're creatures of habit, and if you want to go to what's familiar, and what's familiar is traumatic. This is psychology 101. You try to recreate the same conditions that you're used to as a child. So if you grew up in an abusive environment, you recreate those conditions because that's what you know, because And what you know is what's comfortable, because what's familiar is what's comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's the cycle right there.
That's the problem I've run into a lot. Like when I'm trying to convince any of my friends to go into therapy, they're always afraid of change.
Yeah.
That's like, because you just get so used to like being stuck in that hole that you don't really want to leave, because you're afraid of what's outside. You're afraid of that this trauma is what has defined you as a person, and you're afraid that if you change, you'll be a whole different person. You won't be the you that you've always been.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes into a personal identity thing. Yeah. I think you're right about that.
You have an identity crisis.
That's exactly what it is. And yeah, look, I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit, I've been in therapy for many years, and I think it's done nothing.
It shows.
Yeah,
You're too happy.
Well, I don't think it's yielded results yet. But no, I'm joking. But I do think it's helpful to on any level of trauma that you think you've experienced or may have experienced. It's good to at least explore it and investigate it.
Yeah.
The difficult thing is, again, if you're traumatized, oftentimes it's so traumatic that your mind won't let you remember it, or it won't let you consider it until it comes up in things like dreams.
Yeah, and therapy is like a hermeneutic walkthrough. Like your therapist,
I could have said it better myself.
I say she because my therapist is a female. She'll like, how did this event affect you? I'm like, wait, what event? You said you had this event, but you only said it offhandedly.
Therapy patient,
Exactly.
patient-doctor confidentiality, not doctor-patient confidentiality. Now you got to do the other way around.
Yeah,
you can't say too much.
And that's the thing though, is that again, it's the therapists are trained to catch you. I mean, this is also very classical psychology, but it's like same thing with dream interpretation. I published a work on this. I published on dream interpretations, and from a Freudian and Jungian perspective. And from the Freudian perspective, it's like, well, the things in dreams that are barely details that you don't think are that important, that's the important parts. And the big parts of the dreams are meant to distract you because you're not ready to hear the big messages. So the dreams are slowly giving you the big messages in little tiny doses until eventually it'll become much more of a forceful thing when you're prepared for it. So in a funny way, it's like your mind knows when you're ready to handle something consciously and when you're not.
Yeah, I gotta start keeping a dream journal.
Definitely. I highly recommend you do that. I do the same thing.
I know I got stuff in there, but I keep forgetting it.
It's like, I dreamt that Orlando let me down again.
That's just a dream for you?
But the little detail you forgot is that you let him down first.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty major
As
detail.
soon as I walk into his class,
Yeah.
oh, it's 10 minutes. He's not here yet.
I'm 10 minutes late, and where's Professor? Oh, no, we got to cut that, Jack.
Oh no, there he is.
And
Watch
everybody's
Atlanta gonna get a Pulitzer Prize and something. And he was like, "But did you finish the assignment?"
Hey, I got all A's.
well, keep talking. I haven't read your paper yet. Any other final thoughts? Anybody want to just kind of sum up anything? And
You've gone half an hour over, and it's
We
not
did.
been a minute wasted.
I'm enjoying this conversation. That's why.
So,
Usually when I'm not enjoying it, I'm like, okay, guys, it's 4:00. But if I'm enjoying it, I'll let it linger.
So my final thoughts for those who are listening: if you have been through a traumatic experience, don't lie to yourself. First of all, you do have to address it. And when they say you're not alone, you aren't, because just because somebody may not have gone through what you've gone through doesn't mean they're not empathetic, and not sympathetic, meaning they just feel bad for you, but empathize, meaning they're trying to relate to you. They're trying to help you. Don't be so harsh on them, because that's how you push people away, and you push away the help that you desperately need. When you do need to go get help, ask around, ask if there are people who have dealt with this before. Is there a group I can talk to who just even talk about traumatic experiences? And then that way you can, let things that you feel be heard, be out there, and you can address things that are way deeper, because, therapy is expensive, and you may not know what your self-therapy is. But if you can have somebody who may have went through a traumatic experience, or that there is a group where they can just talk about things that they're going through, please do so. Alcohol is not the cure. Alcohol may numb the pain, but it will not make it go away. And you will be doing way more hurtful things with the drugs, with the alcohol, than you would ever have without it. So make sure that you do reach out to somebody.
Don't self-medicate.
Yeah.
Yes, make sure you
You're
reach
not a
out.
doctor.
And it's useful to find things that you love to
Exactly.
do, hobbies that make you happy, because honestly, it's a
Hobbies
loss.
without guns. Let's put it that way too.
It's a loss of identification, and you'll find yourself better when you're doing things that you love.
Yeah,
not things
that's-
that you think other people will love.
That's the other thing I tell my friends when they say they can't afford therapy. Find something to do. Find something to keep yourself busy, to keep your mind either off of this or a way to like get your thoughts onto something productive.
Yeah, it's called in philosophy. It's called sublation or sublimation, which is to say you take these things that could be destructive and you channel them into something higher. So if you're angry, instead of punching a wall, you work out or something like that. It's that kind of thing.
That's what I do.
Or you punch a wall into like a portrait.
I punch it.
Or you could punch a bag. How about that?
Yeah, punch a bag.
Yeah, it's a punching
Punch a
bag.
man professionally in a sport.
Yeah. And then, of course, this goes without saying, your professors are not your therapists. Students, please
I
realize
can't
that.
punch Manzi.
Oh no, you can
No
punch
way.
Manzi.
We can.
Fight Club meets every
He'll
Saturday.
he'll immediately fold.
No.
Any other final thoughts?
I would say that
I'm
the
sorry.
thing that combines all of your advices is really reading. The thing that
Yeah.
gonna get you away from alcohol and get your mind out of something is reading. The thing that gonna like put more information about what exactly to do and what exactly do you need is reading. The thing that gonna makes you feel like you're not alone, somebody out there talked about this before or like offered solutions or whatever, is reading. I would really recommend.
If reading isn't what fixes your problem, it's where you can learn where to start.
Well, at least, yeah.
Definitely.
And if you don't have the focus on time to read, start doing push-ups.
Or listen to
Audiobooks.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Hey,
Or start your own.
Yeah.
Podcasts can be therapeutic.
I mean,
I never thought of
calendar's
that.
open. We got lots of spots.
Exactly. The Dr. Jack Fletcher is in.
If you're not in college and you can't, if you're not in this college, if you don't have a college that doesn't have a radio show and you need a mic, there's an app, and God, I gotta plug in an app that's not even sponsoring me. Anchor, hit us up. There's an app called Anchor. You can start creating your own podcast with an app called Anchor, and that's if you have a phone. If you do not have a phone, but you have a laptop, look an app for that because all laptops have mics now. So
I think Patreon doesn't that do the same thing? You can just do it for free.
I didn't know.
Patreon,
I
they
thought
pay
Patreon.
you for
Yeah, they
doing
pay you on
anything, for any
Patreon. Those are
service.
donation
Donors
page.
pay you.
So
I
then,
would
yeah, so let's
suggest
A
even-
GoFundMe
YouTube.
page.
Better.
It have a lot of podcasts that you can listen to.
Well, it sounds like this is the last episode we're recording in the studio then, if this Anchor thing is real. No, I'm just joking.
Oh no, it's real. I got it on my phone. I will show it to you.
I'm gonna eclipse you in views. I mean, I probably already have.
You probably have, yeah. I should say this as well.
My mom was the side in view.
Exactly. It's there is some place you can go here at Richland College in particular. It's called the Care Team, and of course there's also we have student resources, student guidance services that are here as well, and they can certainly help you out. So there are channels that you can travel through here at Richland in particular. So please, of course, understand that you're not alone. Even there are systems here in place to help you out. Having said that, and this might sound a little controversial, but I don't intend it to be anything other than encouraging. Don't let the fear of trauma keep you from things. I think that's also important too. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid.
If you can help it.
If you can help, yeah, of course, yeah, definitely. If you can help,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess that'll do, folks. My final thoughts, you ask.
Yes. What are your final thoughts?
Okay,
Can we
time
cut
to wrap
that mic?
this up. Yeah, let's go.
He's got that soundboard.
I'm gonna reach over there.
Think about it.
Well, I'll say this. Okay, in light of everything that's been said, and this should be obvious by this point, but you are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College, and any views expressed on this show are our own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, Philosophy Club, the Art Club, the Care Team, Veterans Everywhere, and the DCCCD. All right, folks. Well, this has been a traumatizing episode. This has been the episode of trauma. It was a lot of fun, and I never quite know how to close these episodes.
Can we have a late?
Oh, I got an idea.
Please.
If you have been traumatized and please
no.
don't hurt anybody and say that that's therapeutic.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Do
Yeah.
not
That's
not
an
hurt other
excuse,
people and say that's my therapy. Don't do that.
As well as animals.
As well as animals.
especially-
Don't injure other people. Don't use weapons. Don't use your own hands to injure anything or break things like that. Make sure it is something productive instead of destructive.
Unless it's in the name of art. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right, do you want to do the sign off?
Please do.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for having me today. And one day, I'll do the art therapy thing and help people. So I'll be there.
All right.
And have a good night.
You have to say.
we have a
The
sign-
tagline is
tagline.
think about it.
Think about
Think
it.
about
Just
it.
think about it.
What?
Just
No, just say just say think about it and like hold the it. Like think about it.
1, 2, 3.
Think about it.
There you go.
That was great. Well done.
Incredible.
I liked it.
Yay!
Thank you.